I made this Doomsday video several months ago, I really did not expect to have the amount of viewership and interest and comments and attention that was played to it that we received. And I just wanted to back up a little bit in the Doomsday scenario and say that our focus for the last number of years has been long-range, rugged, ocean-crossing expedition yachts. And in fact, those by definition are probably Doomsday yachts. And the world's best expedition yachts, probably most boaters have never seen. Maybe in a magazine you've seen them, but you won't see them in Monaco, you won't see them in Miami, and most places that you go cruising they're not going to be, because they're in the Arctic, they're in the Antarctic, they're in the distant Pacific, and they're out exploring the planet in places that most yachtsmen or boaters can't go, and where cruise ships normally don't go. So in reading the comments and in response to a number of inquiries that we've had since this Doomsday video went out, I wanted to step back and I wanted to approach this subject in the same way that we approach a new build or a vessel conversion with a new client. And the first thing that we always do is we define the mission. It seems that the intense interest that we're seeing comes from people's worries about catastrophic events. And it reminds me of a time in my own past when I first became concerned about catastrophic events. I was in school during the Cuban Missile Crisis. I went to Haverford School just outside Philadelphia. And as soon as we discovered that the Russians had ballistic missiles in Cuba, the civilian population decided it was time to take defensive action. And so right here you can see how we prepared for catastrophic events in those days. The first order was to get under your desk. And here we are under our desks. And this evolved because you could see there's a certain amount of exposure that still exists there. You could get hurt, if the part of your body that wasn't under the desk. So then we came up with the full body under the desk approach. And this was far superior, except for those guys that didn't fit under the desks. Things have evolved immensely since then. And also the perception of catastrophic events has evolved. So it seems that the top catastrophic events that people are concerned about, number one would be war, of course. And that could be civil war, it could be invasion by another country. And if you're concerned about war, you're also worried about what level of war. Nuclear war, of course, being the most catastrophic, and you may not have time to get away from that. Another one that I had no idea about is this electromagnetic warfare. And from what I understand, anything that's electrical in your house or anywhere is going to fry, and everything's going to catch on fire. So that's a catastrophic outcome. Pandemics, we're all pretty familiar with. We just went through one. As I said, the yachts qualify as being a good escape mechanism for that. Climate is a concern, and it's not just a gradual warming of the planet where we all fry. They talk about volcanic events. I guess there are a lot more volcanoes around than most people think, and they might all go off at once. I'm not sure why. And then another one was economic collapse. I'm not sure exactly what economic collapse looks like exactly. Here's one take on it, and here's another interesting economic collapse. So these catastrophic events are things that go into the mission objectives for the vessel. So the number one objective would be to escape the catastrophe. So you want to make a getaway. And the getaway can be that the vessel is somewhere nearby and you can get over there, you can get on board and off you go. Or it could be pre-positioned someplace. So it could be down in the Caribbean, it could be off in the Pacific, and you have a plan and a way to get to it. Once you've achieved your escape from the shoreline and you're out of harm's way, you need to establish offshore security. And the basic rule there is the further you get away from the shoreline, the more secure you're going to be, because the less chance that anybody can get out to you in a small boat, the less chance of fallout from whatever is in the atmosphere. You've got to watch for the jet stream, you've got to watch for the winds, for the wind patterns coming off the shore. Part of the mission will be the capability to relocate any place on the globe. So if you are in the Northern Hemisphere someplace and you want to get down to New Zealand, you want to have the ability to make that large of a passage. And that's a very important part of the mission. And in addition to that, maybe get down to New Zealand. And as we saw in one of the comments on the video, that was somebody in New Zealand, and they said, well, I don't think you ought to be coming here. I'm in New Zealand and I'm preparing to go someplace else. So it could be that you go all the way to New Zealand and they don't want to see you, or you don't want to go there anymore, and you got to go someplace else. So you really want to have an unlimited ability to transit oceans, and for any amount of time, and that's part of the mission. Another thing that I think is important, you're going to be possibly living on board this vessel for months. Maybe you're going to be on there for years. You really got to plan out your living space on board. Most yachts are set up for going from point A to point B, and you're going to get off and go to restaurants and go shopping and do all this stuff, or go surfing and diving. And that's probably not what you're going to be doing on your Doomsday Yacht. You're going to actually be living there. So you got to start making the kinds of decisions that you probably made if you built a house. Do you like to hang out in the kitchen with your family? Do you like to cook? Do you like to garden? That'd be a tough one, but you could do some gardening, hydroponic. What are your hobbies? What sports do you like? You can do racket sports. You can do a number of sports on board a vessel. Do you want to have a library? You're going to probably have a cinema. You're probably going to want to have spaces where people can get away from each other and have private time and quiet. And also, if you have children, you're going to want to have homeschooling. You're going to have places that they can do what they want to do. And you might have other hobbies. You might be a painter. You might be a potter. Whatever it is, that should be built into the lifestyle spaces of the vessel. At the other end of this catastrophe, when you come back on shore, if you pull into a friendly harbor and you set up, you've got a place to live, you've got possibly offices and place to work, and that's part of the mission, and that will also go into the design, and we'll talk about that later. And let's say you pull into a nice uninhabited island, someplace very remote, and you want to set up there and rebuild. Well, you've got water makers, you've got some electricity, you've got some generating capacity, and so this vessel could also be the home station for starting a rebuilding effort, and that's something else that could be part of the mission. So the number one item, escape. The vessel's got to be ready. So the first part of readiness, and this is something that has to be thought out well in advance, you've got to have your crew that you want to live with for months, possibly a year, and the crew has to want to live with you for months or possibly years. And so that is a process that is part of the, I call it the vessel criteria, but it's part of the whole mission. And assuming that this is a large yacht, it could very well be down in the Caribbean in charter service, which will help pay the overheads and the carrying costs of this vessel. And if it's on charter, you're going to have a crew on board that's there for charter. And that means that you're going to have serving stewardesses, and you're going to have fun people that do water skiing and diving and all that. And that is very possibly not the crew that you're going to want to go away with when you're doing your escape. So you should have your Doomsday crew on board the boat already or on standby, and do a crew rotation when you get ready to do your escape. The boat should be properly provisioned and kept that way at all times. And if you have a home port, you might have a storage unit or some containers somewhere near the boat where you've got the kinds of provisions that'll be for a long range. Obviously, you want to have it full of fuel and water before you take off, and it's going to have a load of spares on board. It's going to have a machine shop. You've got to have redundancies for all your equipment, and we'll get into that when we actually spec out the boat. You also don't want to be letting your generators, for instance, get it too high hours and then find out that you're going to sea with generators that need to be rebuilt. So you should plan for your relocation. The primary thing initially is just to get away from the catastrophe, whether it's a war, toxic air, toxic water. You're going to have an extreme amount of range. You're going to have an 8,000 nautical mile range under power. But then you've also got wind, and you've got hydrogeneration. And so this is going to give you almost an unlimited range to go anywhere on the planet. You also will be set up to get seafood, to do fishing, so you'll have nets, you'll have long lines, whatever you need for catching fish, and you can set up for hydroponics. Now in the old vessels, in the good old days, with the clipper ships and the windjammers, they brought their meat supply with them. Here you can see a couple of pigs lounging on the deck, not knowing what's coming. And here are a couple of ship's officers looking at their dinner goat. Luckily, on these large vessels, you've got big walk-in freezers and refrigeration. When we spec out the vessel, we've got to have really good insulation around these so that they're efficient and they're not sucking up a lot of electricity. And that goes for the whole vessel. The whole vessel has to be very well insulated, both for tropics and for cold water, possibly Arctic conditions, because you're going to lose a lot of energy in both those places if you are not set up for that. And part of that will be you don't want a lot of big glass. If you have big glass, you're going to have ways to cover it and insulate it, and we'll get into that. Your captain needs to have studied the trade winds and the currents. That information is very available, and most captains will already know about it and know how to make use of it and ride those currents and ride those trade winds. The other thing is, particularly with this electromagnetic blow up that they're talking about, you may not have GPS. And so somebody on board better know how to use celestial navigation so that you're not just wallowing around there going in the wrong direction. You get a sextant. Any of the older captains will know how to do that. Otherwise, if you have a young captain, make sure that they learn how to do celestial navigation. The first of the security criteria is that you get far away from shore. The further away you are from shore, the less vulnerable you're going to be to any sort of small boat attack. We designed these vessels so that they are difficult to board. I know a lot of people in the comments were talking about how great sailboats are, and they are great. But one of the vulnerabilities of a sailboat is that anybody in a small skiff can probably get on board, whereas the vessels that we design and that we're doing conversions on, some of them don't even have side decks. So they have to be able to scale up 3 or 4 decks, and there are a lot of ways that we can make sure that they don't do that. And being able to lock down the vessel is important. Electronically, you can set up all kinds of perimeters and alarms above the water and below the water. And there are things like, very simple things, like putting up a small balloon on a tether that has over the horizon radar capabilities is one solution. The vessel itself, you want to be able to lock down completely. And this means that if intruders do get on the deck, they can't get inside the boat. And if they do get inside the boat, you can control where they go and where they can't go. We also have the ability to navigate these boats from not just from the bridge, but also you could navigate it from the engine room. You could be locked in the engine room, and so you can you could run the boat over to a friendly naval vessel or into a friendly port. It's part of a whole repertoire of different defensive and protective strategies that you can pursue. Ballistic protection we can build in. These are usually steel hulls. You can put ballistic glass up on the bridge. Depending upon what government regulations there are and where you are, you can obviously have armaments on board. It's not unusual to have snipers on board to get through certain waters, but I mean, the fact is, we know where the pirates are. Don't go there. And that's another thing that really isn't built into your boat, but just exists between mariners, is that captains all talk to each other. And so if there's some bad actors around, one boat will relay that to another boat, and everybody's talking, and you know where they are. You'll also know about extreme weather and other conditions just by talking to other boats. And then there are other things that we can build in that we'll get into in another video. There are water cannons, there are laser weapons, microwave weapons that make people think their flesh is burning off, and all kinds of fun stuff like that. And then finally, there are escape capabilities. If you need to get out on a helicopter, you need to get out on a fast escape vessel, we can talk about all those. So that's those all add up into the sort of security package that we will build into a vessel as part of the mission. So that's the discussion of the mission. And those criteria are exactly what we use when we design either the conversion of a commercial vessel for this purpose, or we build a new one. The mission is all important, and the decisions that are made in the mission statement and the mission document is what the designers need to work off of if you're going to have a successful outcome and the vessel that you have in your mind or should have in your mind for this purpose. And that'll be the subject for the next couple of videos. If this is of interest at all, keep watching, and if it isn't, watch something else. See you later.